Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is another edition of the Smoking Barrel. I'm Rustin Edwards, based in Zug, with Matt Stanley in our Dubai.
Yeah, you're right.
And
I'm
troublous
still.
times today.
I mean, I offer no apologies for what is going on right now, but fuck me, like this. Yeah, I mean, an hour ago we had to take shelter because two missiles were intercepted overhead, and I mean, we're close to Jebel Ali, which is that way, which is on fire at the weekend, hit by some debris over the weekend, and they're trying to hit the communication satellites behind the data centers behind Jebel Ali, which is where I got fucking married 11 years ago, and I celebrated my anniversary on Saturday, which I had to leave early because Abu Dhabi got attacked, and this is reality. This isn't, I sort of like to talk about hyperbole and what is happening, but this is real, and we're at war. And I don't care what other way we dress that up. The UAE are part of this conflict, and there have been three deaths. There are more missiles being fired. There are actively things that are going on. We heard a rumor that the Rustin refinery is hit this morning. We're hearing around, obviously, I don't know where to begin, Russ, but I would say this, and I can hear the sound of freedom right now, whatever that is, because there's a US Air Force base not far. So they're circling and they have done all night. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. I couldn't give a shit about oil. I care, you get into this kind of primal states to protect your family. And when my family and I'm here and I'm thinking about, oh, look at the lovely swimming pool that we've got, and I couldn't give a shit. They're hiding in the stairwell an hour ago because there's bombs going off overhead. That is the reality of where we are. And I'm not saying that it's all about me. There are millions of others in the whole country, within the region. It's not just the UAE getting hit. Bahrain had just been hit. Qatar had just been hit. Kuwait, Iraq.
Kuwait, yeah, Iraq.
It's 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 everywhere. This is the sad state of affairs where we are right now, and the show goes on. As long as my family is safe, that's fine. We've got what we want, and the shelves are stocked with baked beans and pizza dough, so that's okay. I don't mind a baked bean pizza, but yeah, Monday morning, 10:25, flat price, Brent 78.22, open the day at 82.37. Um, if I have to jump off because I need to go and see the kids because they're outside because they're off school, obviously, then I'm sorry, but that is the reality of where we are right now.
Yep, we've got crude oil up $5.37 from where it opened or where it closed on Friday. We got gas oil up massively, $106 a ton.
Yeah, that's a
Front
big
month
move.
ICE gas oil, which you expect that to happen, especially when you've got not only oil exports out of the Persian crude oil exports out of the Persian Gulf, but you have a lot of major refining systems in the Persian Gulf which export copious quantities of jet fuel and distillates to Europe and to Africa.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of things that are impacted, and I think the one thing everybody, when we listen to all the reports, everybody's talking about the flow of crude oil, and that seems to be the focus everybody wants to talk about. And is it 20 million barrels a day that's going to be impacted? Is it only going to be 10 million barrels a day? The one thing I think everybody misses is the fact that the Middle East survives on ocean-borne trade. And it's not just oil going out, but it's food and consumer goods coming in.
yeah,
And to me, that is the bigger issue that's at hand, is that no one is saying they're going to transit the Persian into the Persian Gulf via the Straits of Hormuz. I think Maersk Line, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, One have all made statements that they're not going to send ships into the Straits of Hormuz. Marine
yeah,
insurance, a lot of marine insurance companies said they have pulled insurance if you're going to transit the Straits because they deem the risk of having a ship destroyed much higher than anything else. So
yeah,
it not only puts the fact that we've got an energy issue with oil, nat gas that gets exported out of the Persian Gulf, but a potential humanitarian crisis that can develop along the whole GCC with the lack of food imports coming in.
yeah.
Now, granted, You do
Yeah, let
have
me share
container
my
ports in
screen.
the Red Sea, and you have the port of Fujairah.
Exactly. Let me share my screen because I want to show you what's going on. But you're right, that's a very valid point, and we're trying to. Okay, let's try and put things in semblance of order rather than me blabbering on about what's actually happening. So Saturday morning, woke up. I was downstairs. I went to Spinneys, which is our local supermarket, which me and the family do every more or less every morning. Get coffee, get some stuff for breakfast. Babysitter's coming round. This is about 10:30. Then I get an alert on my phone. The US and Israel have started attacking Iran. Um, that's 10:30. It is so the Israel started attacking Tehran. There was obviously the supreme leader was killed, Khamenei, which is only confirmed late Saturday night. And then we saw Iran then hit back, targeting US naval and military bases across the Middle East Gulf, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, etc., etc. And then Iran started firing back. That's where we are. It happened. Obviously, it happened on a Saturday morning when the markets were closed. Did everyone kind of price things in coming to a Friday? I don't think people were pricing in this level of conflict, but I think that people were. It was, $10 a barrel was already baked in. Um, it's it's now got to the point where I think it was late Saturday night as well that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corp said that the Straits of Hormuz are closed. It's only them. So we've written quite a lot of stuff about it. It's becoming, well, as Russ said, what is if you look at tankers specifically. So I think I've covered this a couple of times in the last few poddies that we've put out, but from a product point of view, and we said gas oil is up $110 a ton, trading at $862.75 a ton.
There you
Divide
go,
that by,
Mr. Stanley. You should be able to share now.
thank you, sir. That's $115.80 a barrel of diesel for March delivery ice gas oil. Now, the front month is obviously April. That's $110 up on the day. That is about 15%. 10% of global gas oil and 20% of jet fuel trade depends on uninterrupted Hormuz transit. That is a significant amount. Bear in mind, we've also had the issues around what's happened with certain refineries not able to export products that are derived from Russian crude oil. You've got this, I don't even know what the adjective is, but essentially this perfect storm in the distillates market. And if you're looking at Europe as being the outlet for that product, things in Europe really start getting expensive. And we are approaching the end of winter. We're approaching turnaround season, which means that refineries go into that season where, product demand drops off a touch so they can go and polish pipes and do what they need to do. But that product needs replacing. So we're in this position where, let me just bring up where flat prices. Roads are so quiet, it's frightening. Um, okay, can you see this? Things are a little slow because the Amazon Web Services was
Yeah,
knocked out
there we
this
go.
morning. You got it? Right, so look, this is cable, just starting with this one, dollar sterling. So obviously people are looking at safe assets. People are starting to buy the dollar. That's trading at 130, below 134, first time in a while. Here is what the 321 crack looks like. If I go to where we are right now, $35 a barrel. That is up from let me go. There we go. This is the open. $27. We ramped up $8 a barrel on that's predominantly down to diesel. 321 crack, 3 barrels of the WTI into refinery, two of gasoline and one of diesel out. The 321 crack. It's a good bellwether for how refineries are performing in the US. Here we've got ice gas oil futures. You can see here is the close on Friday. Here we open at 882, up $130 a ton. WTI closed $67.38 on Friday. Here we open 75.36. Brent's the same. Brent, we closed Friday. Where are you? There. 72.52. We opened this morning 82.37. We've calmed down a little bit. Me and you were sort of talking about this before we came on. We've slowly sort of ground down. This was what time this morning? You can see 3 o'clock this morning when the market opened. And we went down to a low of 75.72. I'd imagine the initial was over the weekend trading, the markets were filled, and then and then the market got sold off as people were taking profit. Where are we now? We're back up here, $78.52. So since I was up this morning at 5, we've gone from 76 to 78.54. Not a big move, but London are just starting to come into the office at 6:30 in the morning. London, Singapore, obviously there. We've had announcements this morning as well from S&P Global Platts that, and I will quote verbatim so I don't get in trouble. Platts, part of S&P Global Energy, on March the 2nd, has suspended nominations of crude oil grades that require ships to transit the Strait of Hormuz upon convergence of Platts Dubai. Same in product markets as well. That's certainly the first ever time I've known Middle East Gulf products and crude oil not being part of the daily assessments. I don't know about you, Russ.
I think, the first time I've ever heard of Platts canceling an assessment, not because of a holiday. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even think during COVID they canceled an assessment.
No, they did the opposite. In fact, you know, when because the way that Platts methodology works, which is a net back from the Singapore prices, freight got so expensive and naphtha got so cheap in the US that it was a negative number. So people were having to pay people again. We went into this negative, but it didn't. They still assessed every day.
Uh-huh.
So we've got the stock exchanges here closed today and tomorrow. That's Saudi are up, but Kuwait closed theirs yesterday. Um, I, all right, look, let's move on from what's happening in markets to what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, because obviously this is what is moving the needle. I mean, lots. There's too much stuff. This is what I was just talking to you about. You can see this. Hormuz escalation puts middle distillates at the center of supply risk. That was published last Tuesday. I think you and I spoke about this article actually last week. I can't remember. Let me just go into our map. And apologies if it slows. Obviously, some issues at the moment right now. Right, so this is just for liquids. So the green arrows symbolize vessels that are loaded, orange are in ballast, and yellow are open vessels, just in case you haven't seen that before. It's just loading. Here's Cape of Good Hope, where the vast majority of people who couldn't go via Bab el Mandeb had to circle round South Africa. That is going to start picking up. Activity for sure is going to start picking up. As you said, this is just tankers, but containers and dry cargo. You know, I don't want to overload the system. Here's Bab el Mandeb. So we've still, we saw this morning, sadly, we saw, I think, Hezbollah strike Lebanon. We're back to that again. Houthis are obviously down here. They've said that they're going to support Iran. We've still got, what's this? There's a gasoline cargo that's coming out, Fujairah for orders. And we've still got, you can see there, this one that's loaded out of wherever she has on the way to Singapore, Russian crude on board, Russian crew on board. So we're still seeing that. That hasn't changed. It did start to calm down, but this is the issue, right? So Russ, I mean, we've spoken about this before. This is, I mean, there's nothing going through there. There at the moment, there is not one loaded tanker going through the Straits of Hormuz.
Nor is there one ballast tanker going through the streets.
So we've got this one here. Where are we here? This is this carb anchorage they call us.
Is that the
This is the
skylight? That's
skylight.
the one that was hit over the weekend.
That's the one that was hit over the weekend, yeah. And then there was another one, that MKD. What have we got? Sorry, one sec. It's a bit slow. It's loading. Um, yeah. So look, we've got boats that are obviously loading up in Iran here. This is the holding pattern. We covered this in June last year, and then we've got Fujairah, Khor Fakkan up here, and we've got Fujairah down here. Everyone's waiting here. This is going to become extremely active as things go on. And then the other side, we've got boats that are here. Right, this is Dubai Lights Route here. And obviously we've got Abu Dhabi Anchorage and we've got Palm Jebel Ali. But Jebel Ali port is shut until further notice. And I can't believe I'm saying these words. So, I mean, look, that's where we are. Now, that's the fact. What does it all mean though? This is what we've got. So we've got queues building outside. This will continue to happen. I don't think because of this. Okay, here we go. summary of volume exiting the Middle East Gulf via the Strait of Hormuz, so west to east. So go back to the map. That is going from, come on, you know where it is, west to east, around that side. Let's go back into the Insights article so you can see. This was KB per day, number of boats, 20, I mean, 11 here day before, 18 here, 3. I mean,
Well, and that's going to be the end problem is that, there is no official closing of the Straits of Hormuz from what I understand. Yes,
well, they
there are
can't.
warnings being transited on Channel 16 to ships not to transit, but you have the Iranian foreign minister saying that they're not going to close the straits. The straits are open, but it's almost like you've got that, then you got the IRGC saying no, no, the straits are closed. So don't know who's in charge there and who is selling the truth, but nevertheless, the shipping companies aren't going to transit. Oil majors have said they're not going to transit.
Yeah,
You have insurance companies who say they will pull the insurance from any ship that transits. So effectively, the straits are closed.
yeah,
Yet the market is yet to react or trade that on the crude side. It's trading it from the gas oil side, but not from the crude oil side.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, an
Yeah.
8% rise on, yeah, exactly. I think it's a yeah. Gas oil is certainly, I mean, the EFS, the exchange of futures for swaps, is $78 trading this morning, which is huge. So
Yeah.
that's the diff between Singapore and EU gas oil. But rightly so. I mean, that spread is going to blow out. EU is going to be the demand hub, like we said. I'm not. I don't want to comment on what is happening politically. Um, just because I don't fucking want
Well,
to. But
if anything, the timing of all this is also probably is there ever a good time to have a war? But we are in the middle of turnaround season in the U.S. Gulf Coast and in Europe, and
yeah,
so you have a curtailment of oil flow on top of a low refining run environment. I think U.S. utilization last week was at 88% or 87%.
right.
Which is typical for this time of year as refineries go into maintenance. And
Yeah.
so with that, you lose roughly around 800,000 barrels a day of capacity.
Here's a question. Do you think the EU look at this situation and ease sanctions on Russian energy?
That's a very good question. Now, it depends on what is the overarching reason why all this is going on. My Alpine thought is that when you couple Venezuela with the potential of a regime change and removal of sanctions on Iran if there is a regime change, you put a lot of economic pressure on the Russian government. So do you keep that pressure in place and just take the fact that you're going to have high prices? Or do you back away, as I like to say, crawdad back to your shell and say, okay, Russian oil is okay now? You might see, I would think that if things got really ugly for an extended period of time, we might see a curtailment of the 18th round of sanctions,
Right.
which was banning Russian produced oil or oil from Russian crude origin being imported into the EU.
Yeah.
So you might see that. But
What about it's because it's I mean, look, again, I'm speculating here. I'm just thinking about things. When we saw the end of the Iraq war 20 years ago, we saw this oil for food program, right? So for Iraq. So if you wanted to lift Iraqi crude, it went through a specific part of the UN where you didn't pay them, and there was a food program, right? Now, I'm
yeah,
not saying we're at that point in Russia, but do you think the EU are that dynamic where they could look at, okay, what's happening energy security wise? There's disruption coming out of the Middle East Gulf. Do you think there could be some kind of special purpose vehicle set up to manage Russian energy flowing into the EU where it needs to, or do
well,
you not, or do you think that
there
it's
could
gone
be,
too far?
but you're talking that's going to take a lot of work for the EU to put something like that together.
Yeah,
The one thing about the EU, it is not a dynamic organization that can make decisions on the fly. Everything's got to go through committee, have to have votes, have to have law written. I mean, when you look at it, major war breaking out in the Middle East, and the EU security group is meeting for the first time today, where I
Right.
think all your other major countries had meetings as soon as this stuff broke out. I mean, Cobra in the UK met on Saturday when the war started, when the
Yeah.
missiles started flying.
And
So,
that's the UK. And they're saying they're quick is well, fuck me, well done, Keir Starmer. Actually pulled your finger out your ass. Sorry.
but nevertheless, so we're now stuck in this environment where, okay, we've got low oil flow out of the Middle East. I mean, the one thing is that with the amount of oil that's been sitting on the water, do refineries say, screw it, I'm going to take that Russian cargo and process it because I'd rather keep processing fuel for my local market than not have anything to process at all.
Yeah.
'Cause I think it was roughly around what 40 million barrels of Russian crude that was sitting on the water and an equivalent amount of Iranian crude that was sitting on the water prior to hostilities breaking out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean,
And
just
that could actually be one of the reasons why we're only up, $5.50 on crude is that when you look at it from an actual supply standpoint, there is a lot of oil available in the marketplace to buy and to process.
right. I mean, OPEC announced yesterday, don't let's not forget, what was it? OPEC high
206 206,000 increase.
206,000 increase. And as Russ said, OPEC crude output boost ignored with duration of Hormuz disruption key. Time has become the most important factor in global crude. And we never speak about this much, LNG markets. I know they've
Hmm.
been somewhat benign, but how long will supplies be disrupted through the Strait of Hormuz? The $10 a barrel jump in crude this morning suggests the market still thinks it will be a short-term event, but so far there is no actual evidence to back up this optimistic view. June SEP, right? Well, I know we talk about that trade and I was being jovial about it, and I'm sorry if I'm being a bit serious this morning, but you know, I, I don't know how else to be. June SEP is trading at $3.60 this morning a barrel. I mean, fuck me, I wish we traded that at 90 cents when we had the opportunity. But $3.60, um, that curve, all curves are now pricing in a sustained period of disruption. Um, no more than the front month, $1.61, May, June, and bear in mind it's the first trading day of May, Brent futures. Um,
And also, I think you still have a lot of people trying to come to grips as to how extensive this could be. I think the one saving grace at the moment is, of the ships that have been hit by drones, three ships have been hit.
yeah.
Um, it wasn't like a major strike on anything. And I almost want to think, was that done as just to make a statement? Because I mean, the first ship that was hit, the Skylight, was transiting in Iranian oil, working
Well,
for the.
yeah, okay. I agree. And this is something that I complacently thought about. When we had the 12-day conflict last June, what we saw was the US obviously hit Iran and hit certain nuclear sites where apparently they're enriching uranium, allegedly. And then we saw Iran hit back with a wave of attacks towards the Qudayt Air Base, I think, in Qatar, which
In
is the
Qatar,
biggest air
yeah.
force. Yeah.
And
And that was it.
it was only one volley. It wasn't
That's
a
right.
wave. It
That
was
and
just
that was
a
it.
volley.
And I think people expected there to be history to repeat itself somewhat. We're still seeing. I mean, I'm waiting for an explosion overhead for an missile to be intercepted. So this is the third day now. Saturday night we all slept downstairs because it was going on. 12:30 in the morning, the UAE government issued an alert: take cover. I mean, if you'd have told me that a month ago, I'd have asked you. You should have been sectioned. But that's now where we are, and people are kind of prepared. I think that what you made a very valid point there, and I don't think people have quite understood what happens. Jebel Ali is the biggest port in the Middle East, the ninth biggest port in the world. Not only for the UAE is it important as a distribution hub, but for the rest of the Middle East Gulf, because the smaller container boats do that tramp route up into the northern Middle East Gulf. With that being shut, that's significant. Fujairah have a grain import terminal, so there should be some that can be. There is now a new rail link between Fujairah and Abu Dhabi. But you start thinking to yourself, and I'm sort of this is a significant. significant escalation. And again, the sound of freedom going past me, whatever that is. Um, I don't know if the market quite understands you know, the just how serious things are in the Middle East, because the Middle East has kind of always been, well, there's always an issue, right? There's
Yeah.
always been, and it's sort of dismissed somewhat. Oh, you're in the Middle East? Oh, right. If I go to the States, it's kind of like, well, why are you there? Do you know what I mean? There is that sort of, and the UAE have done which is why I've been living here and raised a family here, done an amazing job of making sure that everyone is secure. I'm not saying that's gone, but you know, it is significantly disrupted. And I don't know what London do when they wake up with oil markets. I don't know if the seriousness is priced in yet.
No, I don't think it is. I think, we had that, as we pointed out in the chart here earlier, you had the initial wave of profit taking because there were people building up long positions going into this weekend because consensus was something was going to happen, just nobody knew when it was going to happen. And now,
Yeah.
okay, now we have the actual event. And typically, whenever there is any type of strife in oil producing regions, you're going to see a massive move up. There are a lot of people calling for $80 crude on the open. Okay, we got to 82, came down. But if you had this continual disruption of flow out of the Middle East for not only products but also crude oil, I mean, we could easily be looking at a $100 event. It may take a couple of days to get to that range, but nevertheless, it is the way things are, potentially trending without any type of, peace breaking out or ceasefire breaking out, which, from what it looks like, the belligerents on both sides do not want to have that to happen yet.
Right, exactly. I
Um,
mean, with just on the practical side of when I said that Platts have suspended nomination of crude oil grades that require ships to transit the Strait of Hormuz. So that's mainly about the Dubai market. But you can still trade the Dubai market in the paper market via the Brent Dubai via the EFS, right? So what what happens there? Like if there's no physical assessment of what Dubai crude is worth, what does that mean to the paper market on the Dubai crude side? I mean, I don't know what happened. Do people just shift pricing from Dubai to say a Brent number or what?
well, I mean, you're going to see, so without a physical market to set the price, you're going to see, differentials are going to price in relation to how the overlying futures move. Because you do have a Dubai futures quote, you have a Brent futures quote, right? They trade on the
Yeah,
ice screen.
yeah,
And so as those quotes move up, because there is an upward bias in the market due to the war in the Middle East, um, obviously all that paper is going to price in accordance with it. Because those paper markets will trade.
yeah.
I mean, it's everything will trade. I mean, it's not only talking crude here, but again, we also have the product markets. You've got fuel oil markets are going to be impacted by this, not only from a demand standpoint, if all the ships start rerouting back around Africa and avoid the Straits of Hormuz and avoid the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb, but you have all the fuel oil that's supplied from the Persian Gulf to the
Yeah.
world, Al Zour, Citra, Ras Tanura.
Yeah,
Um,
I've just seen that there's been a refinery hit in Kuwait. Um, uh, Two injured at Kuwait refinery, minor injuries at KMPC refinery. Production continues normally. That's an evolving story. That US warns Americans in Kuwait to shelter in place. Um,
but
that was at
it's
the yeah. Sorry, go on.
But it is, and we're already seeing that rally in the gas oil market, and that's going to be that should start to trickle through the other product markets because there is a significant amount of refined product that is exported out of the Persian Gulf that's not going to make it to market now.
Right, exactly. Jet fuel. I don't know where gas oil is obviously the one we've seen 10% we see as exposed, 20% of jet. Fuel oil is probably a high percentage, especially with the Iraqi stuff that's got to come out as well, the straight run.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I don't know what's happening on fuel oil markets this morning. I don't know what's happening on jet fuel markets. Um, but look, I'm sure this won't be the last time that we speak this week. I don't mean that in a fucking like dramatic way. I just mean I'm pretty sure we'll do a follow up on this. Um, I I'm always conscious that what we need to do because we enjoy doing what we do on the Smoking Barrel. We always try and give a realistic view on what's happening in markets, and I try and take the piss a bit. And Russ is very good at grounding me. I'm struggling to do that right now. I'm not going to lie, but I'm always conscious that what we need to do is kind of close off the chat with what all this means, what it means for trading, what it means, what it could mean for movements of oil. And I tell you, I don't know. I genuinely can't opine on that. And I'm drawing on 26 years of experience in oil markets here. This isn't my first Black Swan rodeo, but this is about as ambiguous as it gets. And I think that lots of
Well,
people who are in the region would agree. And I don't know what to say about what I think is going to happen.
the only analog that we have in recent history is the when Iran when Russia invaded Ukraine, and we had a huge pop in flat price when that happened,
Yeah.
and you know and in context, at that point in time, Russia was only an exporter of about 4 million barrels a day of crude, give or take. We've got a market that's now 20 million at risk, of which maybe 10 million without the straits being open.
Yeah.
Because you can't export, you won't be able to export from Basra, from Ras Tanura, or from any of the UAE crude production, Al Shahira. So any of those fields inside the Persian Gulf will not be able to export. Even Iran will not be able to export because obviously, if Iran won't allow Saudi's crude to move or Kuwait's move to crude, I can't imagine that Iran's crude will be allowed to move.
No, the only thing you have is the hedge on the east-west pipeline that goes from
Yeah.
Abqaiq out to Yanbu, I think. Is that
And
right? Is it Yanbu?
then you have the pipeline that goes down through Fujairah. And
Correct. The
for
Berber.
Iraq, you do have the BTC as well as the Saham pipeline.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly. So
you do have some outlets to get oil out, but a vast majority still moves by ship.
that's right. And
Same thing with
products.
the
That's
products.
only crude that can move by pipe.
Yeah, but it's not all the crude. It's only a partial point of the crude.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So just in that context alone, we have not yet seen prices move as they should move with this type of disruption in place because it's an actual disruption where Russia was a fear of disruption, if you
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Russia never
Exactly.
stopped exporting product or oil. They still export today.
Yeah.
This is something where exports have stopped for the time being. We're only one day of zero exports, maybe 2 days now, because now we're into and every day there's no export. That's about 20 to 30 million barrels of equivalent energy not being delivered to the market.
So why are we up less than 10%?
That's the thing. I don't think we've yet to see the actual price action on crude oil to reflect the situation. And I think people are going to, try to maybe sandbag it a bit on the crude side because, oh, the market's oversupplied. Oh, there's plenty of oil out there. China has put this big SPR position on. So do they really need to buy more oil? Are they really going to pull more oil into China? Um, you have a lot of other fields that are not in risk, but in a market where you've got 106 million barrels a day of demand, of which 80 million barrels is crude, or 80,000, yeah, 80 million barrels is crude.
Drill, baby, drill.
This is a point where we're going to, we're not the market's not pricing it in yet on crude oil.
Yeah.
Gas oil, I would say it's pricing in a major disruption, and there's probably still more upside on the gas oil.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I don't know where freight's trading. I don't know where the V's will trade this morning.
Well,
Um,
that's a very good question because if you're outside the Persian Gulf, okay, you could theoretically reposition your ship to move a cargo from another location. So it actually could be bearish freight in the short term.
but okay. Look, before we, OPEC saying that they're going to produce more oil. How is that possible if the straits are closed?
Well, that's just it. It's just a number. Now, granted, the spare capacity in OPEC, where does it sit? Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE.
Yeah.
So what can they do? What can anybody do?
I
And
mean, like,
not and just because we're focusing on the Middle East, what also happened last night, which may not be getting a lot of press, Novosibirsk, the port of CPC, got hit last night
did
by
it?
Ukraine. And there were reports of a major fire in the oil terminal there. Now, that could be the clean products terminal, not the crude oil terminal. But nevertheless, I mean, so that little bit is going on as well. I mean, everybody's focusing on the Middle East because that's front and center all of a sudden. But you still
Yeah.
have Ukraine striking at Russian oil infrastructure as well, which is going to also put an upward bias on the market. So, if anything, like we've seen with every war, and I'm going to try to wrap up this rant here. So,
No, 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 please. I mean, it's just, I mean,
we
my
will
wife's
see a
got,
spike in prices. Prices will continue to move higher. I don't think we've seen that happen just yet. I think we're going to see much higher prices, if not today, over the next 3 or 4 days. But with
uh,
every war, there's going to be a point where we're going to hit the extremists and kind of plateau.
yeah, I agree. My wife's got a meeting because she's working from home as well. But um, look, thanks for. I know you messaged me all weekend. Thanks, mate. You're a good mate. And anyway, everyone else has reached out. We're all right. We're all good. We're all okay. Anyone's got any questions? What's happening? Just reach out to us. We will be out a few times this week. I'm going to repost everything on socials because we try and say how it is, and we appreciate all the support and like, comment, subscribe, and
And for any of our listeners in the Middle East, stay safe. Heed
yeah,
the words of the alerts that come out,
yes, do that.
and take
Don't
care of
follow
your
fucking
families, and
Facebook. Yeah.
hopefully, we everybody can get through this unscathed.
All right, mate. I'll speak to you later on.
All right, thank you all for tuning in. Click like, comment, and subscribe.